Okay, Sarah, we're live. Thanks for joining me. As I typically do, I'll give you the floor to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, what you're building with Titanium22. So, all you.
Thanks, Connor. This is great to join. I'm so excited. I am Sarah Yeary. I'm founder of Titanium22 and Bad Human Community. So, yeah, we are a full run digital marketing agency for Titanium22. We have two locations. We're based in the UK and also in the USA. So, currently working on the USA side of things. So, I'm excited for that.
And I'm curious, is that your background? Have you been in marketing and on the agency side for the entirety of your career? Or how did you kind of fall into this sector or section to be, so this is your thing? Why is a marketing agency your thing?
Yeah, so as a little kid, I would always draw in paint, and I was like, graphic design, like computers, like this just is so much fun to me. And then I started developing stuff in like Publisher, Microsoft, like all these little things that just kind of built to this is what I want to do. And then my dad started to teach me how to build websites. And so when I went and got my degree, I was like, marketing. So, and graphic design, like all that stuff, it just kind of flowed. And I've just been doing it since I was a little girl. So I've always been passionate about it.
Very cool. And so you talk about making websites a lot, and then you say that Titanium 22 is a full service marketing agency. So is that your bread and butter, building websites for people? Or
Yeah.
do you have other focuses as well? Or like what other areas do you focus on?
Yeah. So I'm known on LinkedIn as like the website queen because that's what I personally love to do is build websites. And that encompasses a lot of marketing tools. So like graphic design, you have to put into it, copywriting, it kind of involves in like everything. So that's my bread and butter personally. It's kind of what I founded my agency on. So that's it for me. And then obviously Titanium 22 is full service. We'll do personal branding, social media, again, graphic design, SEO, like everything that you would need. So we got it all.
And are you an agency of one, or do you have staff? What does the team look like?
Founder of one. I do have staff and I've got freelancers. So we're probably about 10 strong on any given day. So yeah, got a little group of people and it's amazing.
And then in 2024, what does it take to build a really good website? I don't have much of an idea. I've dabbled with WordPress a tiny bit, and then you kind of, you know how it works, right? You get into something and you're like, wow, this is a lot more complicated than I realized. To really build an amazing, highly functioning website would be really difficult. So I don't know if you can kind of put that in layman's terms at a high level. How do you do it? What is your approach?
Yeah, so my approach, I use WordPress. I'll use a couple softwares within that to like build the websites. And I think with websites comes that technical understanding. You have to have servers, hosting, change DNS stuff. So it's a foundation that has to have a tech side to it, which I think is really cool. And a lot of people kind of are like, I'll just do Wix and don't understand how that side of it works to really get a good functioning website. So if I have a good, strong foundation there, then the rest is just fun. You get to play with it, make it visual and things like that. So I think it's really important to understand all sides of things if you are building a website or, getting somebody to build it for you. And yeah, I can throw up a couple templates. It's not the same thing as what we do. So I think we have a bespoke approach to that.
So like, what is your pitch, right? You just mentioned like a Squarespace or a Wix. Why should someone come to you and really get that white glove service versus just saying, I'll just build something on Wix, or I'll just build my online store on Shopify, right? There's all these tools out there today. So why come
Yeah,
to
and the
22?
tools are so great. And I'm so glad people can do that to a degree. But if you want something super custom, you want to build with different plugins, like Wix and Squarespace are so limited. They're not a very open platform to getting exactly what you need for your unique needs as like an agency, or maybe you're in e-commerce or you're a personal brander needing like a personal brand website. So I think coming to somebody who has that understanding of, okay, let's use this tool, that kind of stuff. I can give you solutions versus you trying to figure it out yourself, which is going to take you 10 times longer because you don't have that experience that I do. So,
And I think it's really, you mentioned personal brand, right? Like if you are trying to build a personal brand online, it's probably more important to be building that personal brand and not trying to learn how to build websites, right? So is that part of it as well?
So that's the digital marketing like shtick. Like we do the stuff that you could probably do, but you don't have the time for. So let us do it for you so you can get back to doing the job that you want to do and the job that you you need to find the time for it too. So, yeah, if you go to somebody with that expertise, then you're, you know, having more time to focus on sales or, getting back to your community and your followers and content creating even. So you're just outsourcing the parts that don't make sense time wise for you. And I've seen that quite a lot in the space that I'm in.
And how do you approach design? Is that, I would imagine that's a big part of a website, or just kind of the brand or the way it looks and feels and flows, kind of the UI. Is there a specific strategy you employ there? Or do you have any recommendations for what makes that really like pop and stand out?
Yeah, so you have to look at what's trending, and I do keep that in mind. Like, is there like a lot of boxes around stuff? We're moving away from like square buttons to round stuff. Everything's curved. You've got a lot of animations. You've got that really minimal look. So I take that into account and make sure I'm quite modern and fresh with my approach. But at the same time, I'm a designer to like a fault. So I have to like come from it from a creativity place too. And I've had a lot of clients who are like, I want it to look like this. I'm like, okay, we can do that. And they're like, I'm not happy with it. I'm like, well, you didn't let me do my job correctly, or like sitting here guiding me in each step of the way. And unless they're creative themselves, they're not going to catch that visual very well. And so I've had clients, they're like, okay, I'm not happy with it. But I was like, that's fine. Like, we did it to exactly you wanted. But if you want, let me take it over, redesign the whole thing the way that I feel like it's going to look best. And then we do that. And they're like, I love it. I'm like, yeah, that's how it goes. So you have to have that understanding of creativity and have that flow with you as a designer. And I think that's important to bring to the job, because you can have website builders who are, they're going to build you a good website, but it's not going to have that bespoke custom design approach that looks so different and unique for yourself compared to other people. They don't have that element of creativity.
And how do you recommend that somebody pick someone like you or a good website designer? It seems like you could waste a lot of time going to someone and say, hey, build me this. And you say, oh, I don't like it. And then you're just like going to a bunch of different people. How do you know you're picking the right person that's going to give you what you need, and you're not wasting time working with a lot of different agencies and people?
Yeah, so I think you have to look at somebody's portfolio. They should be showcasing that. Do their sites look good? Are they what I want it to look like? And so that's an important thing I tell my clients to do. Give me 3 websites you like the look of, and we can like catch that vision for you. So you have to look at, okay, are they building sites that I like the look of? And also, do they come recommended? I mean, most of my clients nowadays are referrals of people in my community and my network who are like, yeah, I use Sarah. She's really great. And they'll be like recommending me out. And I don't have to do any outbound sales at all, because of people just coming, and they're coming off the backs of recommendations from good work that I've done. So that's also important. Make sure you're doing that quality work to get that referral and make sure they're happy. And, it's not about money at the end of the day. Are you bringing a good experience for your client? And are they happy with the end result?
Yeah, I think that speaks to like product, right? You provide a really high quality product. So, I mean, do you ever think about the fact that you don't have to market or even sell very much? Like, do you feel, is that an intentional strategy, or is it just kind of happened that way?
Kind of twofold. It's kind of happened because marketing takes a lot of time, and we're marketing a lot for our clients, where the irony is we were a marketing agency. So yes, we still have to market for ourselves. So I think we are in a good spot where we don't have to do a lot of outbound stuff to get it inward. Although we keep the basis of content creation as the focus, because we have to showcase, again, that we can do the job. We can grow your socials. We can grow your personal brand. So we're like really hot on like making sure people see that we can do that from our own personal brands and our own marketing channels. So,
and how did you get that good? Like, maybe I think this just speaks generally to build any skill. Is it just years of practice? Maybe for anybody else listening out there that wants to develop this skill or any skill in general, how did you do it?
So I'm really hot on personal brand on LinkedIn. That's where I grew the fastest. That's where I gotten most of my income. Most of my clients are from that space. And it was really plugging into a community there. And then trial and error. It's just making sure I'm posting consistently. Does this work for my audience? Do they like this kind of stuff? And just figuring out what works best and feels authentic for me as a person. So, I mean, it's just consistency at the end of the day. So make sure you're doing that and you'll be fine.
I'm curious, what is like a good website or your favorite website currently? Are you out there kind of researching like any big brands or big names, and or have you come across a website recently? And I mean, I'll check it out later.
Yeah.
I'm just curious from your perspective, like, hey, this is a great website. Whoever built this did a good job.
Yeah. So 9 times out of 10, it's really funny. Most of my clients will come to me with, again, those 3 websites that they like the look of. And it is either going to be the Apple website or it's going to be the Great Influence website. And time again, people come to me with these website references. I'm like, yes, but they're such great website builds. They're that minimal approach. They've got the right animation. They look clean. So, I mean, always shout out to those websites. They're great.
What's the Great Influence?
So they're a personal branding agency based out of England. And yeah, they work with some great people. Check them out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. And then I'm curious too, personal branding, I think it is big right now, just considering social media, the internet, right? Everyone has a LinkedIn profile. Everybody has a YouTube channel. People are on podcasts, everything like that. What is your approach to personal branding? You mentioned earlier you're the website queen. Is that something you coined yourself? Was that intentional or did that develop organically? How are you approaching your personal brand, considering you help others build theirs?
Yeah, so I think you have to look at it like what feels unique to you and authentic. And obviously, I like to build websites. So I'm like, let me just coin this as a nice little moniker, use that little crown emoji, see what happens. And now people will leave me comments, oh, website queen, like all this stuff. And I barely even post about it these days. It used to be all over my platform. And I've kind of slowly stripped that away once it became known. Like everybody knows the Apple logo, but you don't have to say Apple underneath. Everybody knows what it looks like. So I've built that platform up. People would be saying it in podcasts and LinkedIn Lives, the website Queen Sarah and all this stuff. So it became known. And then once it was out there, I could kind of strip it back and not have to use it as much. So it kind of took off from there once I started using it. So that was really cool. So yeah, I think little personal things that feel good for you. Maybe it's this specific emoji. Maybe you're really into donuts. I have a friend who's really into donuts. That's his personal brand across like social media, and everybody knows him as that. So it's just really funny. And people will even send him donuts in the mail. And it's just like, pick something that's really fun and, make it your thing.
So you say donuts, but I mean, he's not selling donuts, or what is
He's
he?
not selling donuts. He's just eating donuts. And I think that's just the best life.
So he's just eating donuts and he's just building a following based on eating donuts and different types of donuts.
Yeah. So his name is Tarek. He actually works for a personal branding agency. And so I think what they will tell a lot of their like employees and even their own clients, is to pick something that feels really different in the space of LinkedIn. It's super corporate. People don't want that anymore. They want like something fun, something that breaks up those AI posts you see all the time. So something like that goes against the flow of the norm. And so he picked donuts and that works for him. So yeah, I have another friend who does cookies. I don't know why it's food related at the moment. Maybe I'm just thinking about food, but yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out the broader pitch. So for the donuts, is he talks about donuts a lot, but he runs he's part of a personal branding agency, and that's how he attracts clients to his personal branding agency.
Yes.
Is that correct?
It's being known as something counterculture to that corporate approach. I think it works better. It's disruptive. It makes you stop on your feed and people will be like, look, I had this really cool donut today, and like tag him in their post. So he's growing by awareness because of this funny little emoji and funny little like moniker that he does for himself. And so I think it's not always about what's the best sales approach for me that feels really corporate. It's like, what's really funny? What's going to help me grow? What's that awareness point that's going to stick in people's mind and be memorable at the end of the day versus, I can, build you 10 websites and all this stuff. Like it doesn't have to be that like cold approach anymore. It can be fun. And I think Gen Z have come in and did a great job at being disruptive in that space and allowing like the millennials to like, we can be free and not have to like have that Gen X boomer on top of us being like, that's not professional enough for LinkedIn. And we're like, nope, that status quo is changing. Like millennials are in charge now. We can sit there and push back against that. And I feel like Gen Z have really given us the freedom to do that. So shout out to them. Yeah.
I'm assuming you're a millennial.
I am a
Is that
millennial.
okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I am too. How do you approach it, right? If running your own company, right? You're a millennial leader, a millennial founder, and maybe if you could contrast that with other managers, bosses you've had in the past, is there any sort of lessons you've learned from people that have managed you and now considering you're kind of the manager, the founder, the director of your own company?
Yeah, so I've worked at agencies before founding my own, and they were so dead, so that corporate feel, that 9 to 5, you're not getting paid for overtime, we're not going to give you like compensation for stuff, we're going to pay you low salary, we're going to be a really toxic space and, gaslight you and lie. Like I've had actually some pretty bad experiences with stuff like that, and I feel like that's just that old mentality that Gen X have, and it's really sad to see that they can't adapt and change as much. And I won't speak for everybody. There's a lot of really cool people that age that can do it well, but I've had some bad experiences. So it actually led me to found Bad Humans. It stands for BA Decent Human. It's a new community space that I just launched with Amy Pauley and Nick Jametta. And we are kind of providing resources for people who want to quiet quit or in a toxic space. And we're also providing resources for leaders and founders and managers who want to make sure that their atmosphere and their culture is healthy. So I think that came out of a place of toxicity, and like, what's the positive approach for your life is like, what can I do to make good on something that really happened to me and I know other people could be struggling with? And so that led me to launch that community. So yeah, we just started. We're really excited. But I think as a leader, it's taught me, people are human at the end of the day. They have pains, they have emotions, they have suffering too. So if you're not bringing that into the equation as a workspace, you're not valuing the team that are there. So I'm really hot on this. My full-time staff, his name is Taylor. I'm like, okay, it's 5 o'clock. You better be logged out. And he's like, so I'm really hot on making sure that my own culture is really healthy because I've experienced it so bad. So I'm like, you need a day off, you need a mental health day, take it. Do you need to go for a walk right now? Let's take a breath and like breathe. Like, let's be okay as human beings. Because if you take care of that side of things, I think the loyalty, the work ethic, all that stuff follows, because it's from a place of like, this is a safe space for me and I feel valued and I feel loved and protected, and I'm going to bring my A game every day because I want this to work. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're doing that to build a positive place for your employees, but you also find that it allows people to actually be more productive and more loyal. Is that what you found?
1,000%. And I've not trialed this in a say, but I've been my own like micromanager. Not that it was ever toxic, but it was like, okay, all these amends and all this stuff, and that freedom wasn't there as much. So I've almost trialed and errored that to a degree. And I've just found that, like, you've hired them for the job, let them crack on with it and let them do it to the best of their ability and let them manage their own role in a sense. And that just comes back to you so much better and so much healthier. So I've like kind of hacked that like secret of like, employee retention rates and that kind of stuff. Like, treat them as valuable people at the end of the day. And like, that's what everybody wants, So, and they're going to showcase that back and like in work ethics.
How do you manage that though versus, I think that's great. And I think it does work more often than not, but I think it also kind of opens up an opportunity for people to take advantage, or maybe, or how do you realize that, hey, someone actually isn't a good fit. I'm giving them all this flexibility and freedom and I want them to perform, but they're not, right? So I think that, it's kind of a fine line. You're right, but it's a fine line. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, so I'm really lucky, and the people that I have hired are good workers at the end of the day. So like I know they're getting the job done. Like that's my kind of thing. If you're getting the work done, I don't really care if you're sat there 9 to 5. So it's kind of that work output. And I've had employees as well that I've had to fire. I'm like, you've had all the freedom, all that stuff, but the work isn't there. So like,
Mm-hmm.
what gives here? So it's, one of those things where you kind of have to like know the people you're hiring. We always do like little trial periods for hiring and stuff like that. So I think it's just being mindful of how do they work best. So are they going to work better in an office atmosphere? Or can they work on their own and like in their house and like get the job done. So
Do you have like a hit list or a checklist where someone can kind of go through it to determine, hey, if they are in kind of a toxic space or a less than ideal space? Because I think, people may just not know. They may just say, hey, this is just how having a job is, having a work life is. This is just how it is everywhere. So how do you differentiate or distinguish that, hey, maybe I should get out of here and there's better places to be?
I think a lot of employees kind of can know that for themselves because they'll start to see it reflected in their work ethic. Again, it's like that quiet quitting mentality to where they're like, you know what, I'm not going to give 100% because I don't care about this job. I don't feel valued. I don't feel supported. I'm not growing. And so I think they start to mentally have their own red flags. And so those are definitely things that people should be aware of. Like, is there room for opportunity to grow? Are you being compensated fairly? Are people like helping you manage mental health? And are you going through something difficult? Are they giving you that time and space to process that and not feel like your job is threatened at the end of the day? So those are definitely things. Does your boss micromanage you? Are you, given that freedom to kind of work and develop the role yourself versus, being told you have to do all these things, things like that are definitely on the list. I don't know. Do you
Okay.
have any yourself maybe that you want to add in?
I think to your point, I think you just kind of know. I think with the lack of motivation, not being excited to work there and things like that. But I feel like people do tend to stay in less than ideal situations maybe longer than they should. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that and why people do that. And I think part of it is because, hey, okay, I'm going to go find another job, but that there's uncertainty there. Is the grass really going to be greener? I have to do all this work, put all these resumes out there, reach out to all these people, and it's not guaranteed either. So I think that's a lot of it too. This is bad, but it could be worse, and it's going to take a lot of effort on my end to maybe put myself in a worse position. So
Yeah, I think you have to calculate that risk for yourself. We're seeing a lot of moves where people want that really easy job. They'll just stay for the money. They do the 9 to 5. They'll be like, 90% there with their work ethic and they'll clock out at the end of the day. But that freedom, that 9 to 5 also gives them a lot of like liberty to build their like 5 to 9, that like side hustle entrepreneurial mentality. They can be like, you know what, I can make sure my bills are getting paid, but at the end of the day, I can sit here and content create on my own time. So I'm actually finding people want those, like, even if they're toxic jobs, just like working that 9 to 5, clocking in, clocking out, and then they can build on the side until they're stable or they've built that enough. So I think that's like a really safe way to build if you're wanting to launch out on your own, or even, find a new job with new skill sets that you're building in the evening.
did you do that at all when you were at a 9 to 5 agency job? And were you putting in the initial work to form your own agency and your strategy and maybe your own personal content? Is that something you have experience with?
Yeah, so I was at my old agency and I had a couple of freelance clients on the side. So I kind of made sure I grew my freelance clients to the point where I could launch my own agency. I knew my bills were being paid. So I built in a safe way. My dad always says, like, don't quit your current job if you don't have something lined up, because like that's such a risk, like, especially in this economy. So I made sure I was covered. I had a good buffer and I could be like, okay, see ya. And I'm going to, start my own agency. So I did that myself. Yeah. On my nights and weekends, freelancing. And I even let my own employees do that if they want. This is such a side hustle like mentality of life and economy. Like you almost need that on top of your 9 to 5. So I'm always appreciative of that and supportive of, if they want to do different things for themselves and content create, like you have to support your employees to make sure they're covered too.
Mm-hmm. And was that a big no-no, like considering if you're working 9 to 5 for another agency, to like from their perspective to have clients on the side?
I think there's always like a non-compete clause or like some sort of like understanding, like I'm not freelancing because I might take your clients, that fear of like, we're going to lose out because you're doing what you do when you could be doing it for us, but you're doing it for yourself. So I think it's that like mutual understanding of like loyalty for your employees. Like, yeah, if you need to take a couple like side hustle jobs, like I'm all for it. Like I want you to like build for your future and all that kind of stuff and be supportive of that. So Yeah, I think it's just that understanding of like trust between people. And if you've created a really healthy agency, that trust is there. And I know that's not the case for everybody, but that's like something that they should be mindful of. Build trust.
So I think you already mentioned it that obviously you're supportive of the 5 to 9. So generally, do you give advice to people, peers, whoever it is, if they are in maybe more of a bigger corporate role, the bigger company name, just to do it anyways and to not inform your employer, and whatever you're doing outside of your working hours is your time? Or how, what's your opinion on that, and how should people approach that if they maybe have more of they work for a bigger name or a bigger corporation and they want to
Um,
start posting on LinkedIn or YouTube, whatever it is?
I have a lot of friends who are scared to post on their LinkedIn because their corporate job might see it. Whereas like I'm of the mentality that like corporations should be using personal branding for their staff. So regardless of if they're building every single post for your corporation, they're building their platform regardless, like that's a value to them as a company and as a brand. And they should be taking that on and like championing that versus like you might say something bad and make us look bad. Whereas like people know personal brands are the opinion of themselves. I mean, people used to have it in their Twitter, like my own personal opinions and not reflective of the brand that I actually work for. They used to have to say that, but I think that's a shared understanding these days for brands. But yeah, personal brands grow better than actual brands and companies because people are trusting people at the end of the day, and not brands these days. We've seen that shift in like consumerism even. So, I mean, utilize it if you're a big brand. And I think for employees who are scared, do it anyways. And even if you're not posting about your like corporation, like the place that you work at, like you can post about other stuff. And if they red flag that and they call you in for a meeting, that's when that's a really toxic atmosphere. If they're monitoring your own social like platforms and telling you what you can and cannot do, that's like impinging on your free speech. And I think that's again major red flag for any place you work.
Yeah. And I think you'd say, okay, if they let you go or you part ways, then good riddance. You'll land somewhere
Yes.
else if you need to. That will be supportive of you building that brand, whatever it is that you're building.
Yeah. And if you
And that,
build your personal brand, you're probably not going to be without a job because people can see that you've got skill sets to grow and like digital copywriting, all these things. Like you can, have added value at the end of the day. So you're probably going to be better off finding a job if you are building your personal brand versus not.
do you feel that everyone can have a personal brand or should have a personal brand and be able to essentially monetize it? I think that's everyone's goal, right? Like you just don't build it for fun. I think at the end of the day, there's you want some earnings behind it, however you make that happen. Or
Yeah.
will the marketplace get too crowded? I mean, it's just something I think about, like, hey, if I'm on Twitter a lot, or maybe it's just an echo chamber of my feed and LinkedIn of like, oh my God, there are thousands of people tweeting about whatever, biohacking, copywriting, website building, whatever it is, right? So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Will the marketplace get too crowded from a
Oh,
solopreneur,
I think it's
entrepreneur?
already really crowded. Absolutely. We've seen it in probably the last 3 years. LinkedIn is just super saturated with people who are, personal branding like professionals or copywriting professionals. And so I think it's a really interesting space to what it was a couple of years ago when everybody kind of first joined and like was like, oh, you can grow really fast on this thing. That said, I think everybody has their own personal brand, whether they're posting about it or not. So why not utilize it? Why not monetize it? Why not grow? Because you're never going to regret that at the end of the day. Having, a good amount of followers and a good loyal community and network behind you, with every move that you make.
And how do you handle it, right? Obviously you're growing yours. I think, and I've dabbled a bit, and we're posting all these podcasts on YouTube. A lot of times it can feel like a chore to continually post on social media. How do you manage that? Or do you disagree and you say, no, it's the most favorite part of my day, posting on LinkedIn or whatever it is? And maybe you can tell me that, and I might believe you, but I'm just curious how you make it not feel like a chore, or if you agree it is a chore and that's just the reality of it.
I think it can be really fun to where it doesn't always feel like a chore. That said, at the end of the day, it is feeling like a chore more these days. So I'm taking less time to post. I'm not neglecting it, but I'm not building it as strong as I once was, because I've got it to a pretty stable area of like amount of followers and my community and that kind of stuff. So I don't have to sit here and pour gasoline all over it to make it grow and make sure I'm posting every single day. So it's one of those things where like client work is coming first. So I'm like prioritizing that, making sure my work is excellent versus like always building my personal brand. So sometimes like you feel burnout and you need to take a step back. And I think that's okay too. And I think that's really important to just check in with yourself. Like content creation is really draining. So most people will say that. I mean, that's just kind of a given. Unless you have people doing it for you, it's going to take a lot out of you. So you have to factor that in. That said, I'll probably never stop because it is bringing in ROI. It is bringing in clients. So I have to look at it as not a chore, but like as a part of the business that I like need to make sure I'm consistently doing. I'm consistently bringing clients in from my posts and that kind of stuff. So it's important to still keep doing.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. Like your metric is how many clients do I have or in the pipeline, and am I working, and is that deal flow just continuing, right? You're not looking necessarily at how many followers I have, and I have to have 50,000 followers on LinkedIn. So I think that could be applied to a lot of people, right? If it's getting the result you want, then don't do more than you need to do, right? Because you could also, I would imagine, get so many people that want you to build a website that you couldn't handle it all.
Yes.
And you say, hey, you take on too many clients, then the customer experience suffers, and that hurts you as well.
Yeah, I have to be mindful. Can I actually take on the amount of like clients that would be coming if I sat there consistently posted, and I would just have to keep growing a wait list? I think I'm working on like 4 websites right now. I've got 2 in the pipeline. I've got another pitch call today. Like I think there's a lot with that. So I have to be mindful of not growing too fast, that I can't actually manage the workload that I'm bringing in. So that again allows me to kind of step off that gas. And I mean, followers don't equate to like income. You could have 1,000 followers and still have enough income and enough clients from just the kind of posts that you're doing, and like the pace that you're doing it at, to where you're not needing to like grow. So I've kind of grown mine to a good like level to where I can be like, okay, I can post a couple times a week. That's fine. Even if I don't post that week, that's fine too. I'm not going to it's not going to break anything. And I can even focus on other platforms that I want to grow instead. So that's what I'm kind of currently working on, is going on X, obviously Instagram and TikTok one day. So growing other platforms and Threads. I'm actually really into Threads right now. So yeah, just being mindful of yourself and your mental health and making sure it's not hurting you at the end of the day. That's important too.
What differences have you noticed? Obviously, you have a pretty good following on LinkedIn, right? 20,000 something followers. What differences have you noticed between LinkedIn, X, and Threads? Are there different challenges on those other platforms?
Yeah, I think the demographics that are on there it's quite interesting. You'll see a lot of like Twitter bros on X and like that kind of mentality, and that's great. But you're seeing on Threads a lot of the females that aren't on X because they, it was kind of coined as this really fun Instagram kind of angled like X. And so you're seeing, again, a lot more females, entrepreneurs that are like diverse, like that kind of following isn't on X anymore, and they're over at Threads. So I think demographics there are completely different. And that's really fun to read about and see. And then you'll have Instagram, you're like general influencers and all that stuff. That platform is still inundated and saturated with that kind of stuff. So you have to know your market when you're going in and building and content creating on that platform. So yeah, it's been really cool to see.
Do you have your eyes on anything else? I think everybody knows the typical suspects, right? X, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. I mean, and considering you are the personal brand, the marketing agency, I mean, is there anything else out there on the horizon, or is it really use those mainstay platforms, stay consistent, have a good offer, and just keep building on those? Is that your strategy? Is that what you recommend clients as well?
I think those will always be the mains, but at the end of the day, you have to think about off socials, because we had Meta down the other day, LinkedIn was down the other day. So if you're like putting all of your eggs in one basket, you're really missing out. I always recommend for my clients, hey, are you doing a podcast? Are you reaching other people that way? Do you have an email offering? Are you doing email marketing? And are you building landing pages for all your different like ebooks and those kind of things? So they're building off of socials too, because you can't always count on socials. Like, what if TikTok actually gets banned in the US? Like, what are people going to do? So you can't sit there like, be like, this is my one platform. You have to build elsewhere. And I think Be Real will make a comeback. Hopefully, we'll see about that one.
And what's Be Real? So I think I've heard that before, but
Be Real is this kind of cool social media where it's posting in real time. So they like take a photo and it takes a photo of them and whatever the camera is facing on the other side at the same time. So you're like, it's a real moment of like posting where they, I think, give the prompt like, okay, everybody at 3 p.m. in the entire world, like, here you go. We're calling you to take a photo right now. So everybody in that moment stops what they're doing, takes a photo, and it's like, okay, that's that authenticity. That said, you're seeing a lot of brands and like celebrities try and join the platform. People are like, we didn't want that here. We wanted authentic. We wanted our friends, community, and real time stuff. And I think they're trying to disrupt that a little bit. So I'm watching that power play to see what happens.
I think we mentioned this too earlier a bit, like on consumerism. Do you have a take on celebrity brands? There's a lot of celebrity brands. Every celebrity has a tequila or whatever it is. Mr. B says,
Wow. That's the goal, isn't it?
Like, I don't know what your opinion is, and I think you say, hey, this is where it's headed, but is there a point where consumer also gets exhausted by, oh, another YouTuber has a new product, or will that always be beneficial to the creator to create a product?
I think it's really cool that celebrities and people with big followings will build a roadmap for the everyday man to follow to get there. They've kind of gone before you, they've pioneered it. And so you can kind of, copy and mimic some of those like outlines of strategies. And I think that helps us build. That said, I think celebrities are also capitalizing on the personal brand themselves. They see that that's the new thing. People are trusting that. They want that like humorous, like those videos. They want stuff that is really authentic, dare I say again, to where it's like, behind the scenes of your normal everyday life as a fabulous like celebrity. So you're seeing a lot of celebrities take on content creation as a role, and they're making those funny dance videos and those kind of things that are like that you wouldn't normally suspect that with a celebrity from like 10 years ago doing. That said, I think a lot of people have to be mindful that they have a massive team backing them as a celebrity to help them build. So you cannot achieve that as a one-man band. And I think people get that wrong a lot of times, and they're like, why can't I put out this much content? Well, you can't. That becomes a full-time job at the end of the day. But these celebrities, again, they don't probably have time either, but they've got a whole group of people helping them build, posting for them. Like, it's not normally them actually managing their personal brand. It's other people. So people need to keep that in mind.
Yeah. And I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but I kind of like how, to your point, that social media is kind of even the playing field, or in my opinion, right? I don't even really pay attention to mainstream celebrities anymore. And I also think it's kind of funny when they, like, to your point, attempt to start a YouTube channel or a podcast or a TikTok channel, and it just doesn't go as well as they think, right? And so I think there's kind of this shift going on where, especially for younger generations, it's going to be the Mr. Beast, and he's probably, he's been around for a long time now, and he's probably even too mainstream. But there's just so many more people that have the smaller 10 million following. But I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to say, like, mainstream celebrities they seem to be less relevant, and I think that'll continue. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, so the ones that have adapted to content creation for themselves have done well because they've pivoted into a space that the consumers and the everyday man has grown to. That's how we use those platforms. That's what we want to see. We're going to favor that kind of content versus the really polished stuff, the corporate stuff that doesn't work anymore. And so I think the celebrities that have adapted to that are doing really well, and the ones that haven't aren't doing as well. So, but yeah, to your point, it has leveled the playing field. It's that American dream where you can go out and get everything that you want and more, because the opportunities are there. And I think that's the beauty of social media. You can build it, you can monetize it, you can do whatever you want with it and grow it. And those are the new celebrities, those influencers, those people that have built their brands and adapted enough. So I think you're
Hmm.
seeing them overtake celebrities a lot of the times and almost become celebrities in their own right. So I think that's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, and maybe we could kind of shift a little bit. I want to focus on you and kind of what you build or like what you've learned through trying to build something, right? Because you just said it. I mean, anybody can build it. Anybody has that opportunity, but it's still not easy. So I don't know if you've learned any lessons since kind of leaving the 9 to 5 agency world or how you've changed since, okay, I'm a founder. I now have all this responsibility. It all kind of rests on my shoulders type of thing. Anything
Yeah.
you've learned, any lessons that stand out?
I think the number one thing here is building in public. Again, you're seeing that shift of people with that behind the scenes content. They're a founder, they're an entrepreneur, they are giving a rundown of their day, they're telling you everything that they're doing, they're spilling all their secrets, they're giving value away for free because they know that leads to their credibility at the end of the day. And so I think that's the number one tip for people. What I've learned is how I built my brand is building in public so people can see what you're doing and be a credible, thoughtful leader in your space.
Yeah. And I think the misconception there is if you tell everyone everything, then they just come in and steal all your ideas. Oh, Sarah taught me exactly how to build a website. So now she's no longer the website queen. I am. But I mean, that hasn't happened, right? Would you say the opposite happens?
I think you have to be mindful with the kind of value you are giving away for free and is it actually going to help your community. I could tell you all the steps to build a website, but you probably don't have the time. You're probably not going to understand like server settings and all these kind of things like so I can tell you and give you all those things, but I think that's not the value that my community wants to see. So I think being mindful of what they want. They want those hot tips for like, animation steps and different things like that they want instead of like all the behind the scenes, which you can do too. But I think again to that, it's the misconception of like if I give it all away for free, they're just going to go and do it. Whereas probably not. They probably don't have the time, but they're learning too, and I think that's really cool. And they'll learn what you do and be like, you know what? Now you're in my thinking. You know how to do what I want to do, but I probably don't have time for, and I'd probably just want to hire you anyways. And so, but you're staying top of mind because you're sharing that content. Whereas if I don't ever post, I don't ever share value, I'm not doing anything, nobody's going to think of me when they're like websites. So I think it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's that balance, right? And then kind of related to you as a founder too, or what have you had to sacrifice or what have you had to change maybe personally when building a company? What do you have to give up to have this big following and all these clients coming in and a high quality product and service that you offer people?
Yeah, I think it's that really funny. I don't work a 9 to 5, but I'm a founder. So I work 24/7. I think people don't understand that that actually is the culture of a founder. And you have to kind of give up a lot of years of your life to really build something to it where it's stable to where you can be like, I can go on holiday now or vacation and I can take off and do my flexibility. Whereas you do get that as a founder, but you have to be mindful of that sacrifice. Is that worth it right now? Or do I need to continue building? So yeah, most of my nights and weekends are spent working till 1 a.m., got to get website edits done and that kind of stuff. But I think if you truly love what you do as a founder, it doesn't always feel like work. Like I'd rather sit up late and build a website than, other things I could be doing. So that's fun to me. That brings me joy. So I know I'm in the right space and field for myself.
And is that how you avoid burnout? Is that kind of the key or how you avoid quitting? As you say, hey, I actually enjoy
Yeah.
doing this?
It helps. That said, burnout will come anyways because it is so draining to content create and work all the time. So I think it's again just checking in with yourself and being like, you know what, I feel really, really, really burned out today. I'm gonna go on a walk instead, and this client can wait a couple days. Like, just being mindful of that and like making sure you're having healthy habits. Like if I didn't go to the gym and eat healthy and drink a lot of water and make sure I'm really healthy as a person, it's going to reflect in my work. So I think self-care almost comes first because if I can't do my job right because I'm not treating my body right, then my job it's going to be impacted. So I think that's important to keep in mind and almost That's priority a lot of times.
Do you have a go-to of like, hey, I just need a break? Is it a couple day trip, or is it just a walk, like you said, and then back to it? I mean, anything that
Yeah.
works well for you.
Going for a run or going to the gym or something, I will take a good hour or two to do if I like really feel the burnout. Maybe it's watching a movie, maybe it's playing Xbox with my friends. So I'll do that. And again, it's just being mindful of like I can't mentally process that right now to do this job that I need to do, and I've got to work with my body and not against it. And so yeah, you gotta
Mhm.
take those breaks. You gotta have a little fun too. Otherwise, what's the point?
And I think one thing I noticed, this is kind of random, but one thing I noticed on your LinkedIn profile is that you lived and worked in the UK, in
Yeah.
London, correct, for a while. And now you're back in the US. And so I'm always curious of like the cultural differences or what the differences in experience and maybe like which you prefer or things that you noticed about the UK and trying to build a company there or work for a company there versus the United States.
Yeah, so I'm blessed in the fact that I have a company in the UK and in the US,
Oh yeah,
Titanium22, both
true.
locations. So it's really cool to like juxtapose the two and see cultural differences in terms of clients and how they work. And getting all those bank holidays that they get and that annual leave that they get versus the US where they're not required to actually give you any as a corporation. So I think in terms of like work, the US works so hard, but again, I think that's not also healthy. So I actually value the work culture that most of Europe follows, and I feel like the US should adopt that. Yeah, time zones has been really funny. I've had great clients. They're really gracious. They know that I'm building in the US and that I'm over here right now. So they're like, yeah, I can like, wait a couple hours, do this meeting this time and that kind of stuff. So they've been really great to adapt. And I have, freelancers in both locations, be mindful of client times and that kind of stuff. So it's building around what's there versus trying to shift it all the time and adapt it to what you want it to be.
So I want to ask you a question too. Do you think it's changing in the United States, kind of that culture? You mentioned it as the millennials become more in control. I mean, I considering we're both millennials, I mean, I manage people as well. I feel like I'm in that boat. I don't know if that's stereotypical and there are still, people millennial managers out there that are just like Gen X and boomers, but I don't know if you could speak to it generally, if we're kind of headed that way. It seems to be the case. I don't know if it's actually true or if that's just kind of a stereotype or you just see a microcosm of the millennials that are like that.
I think again to compare the US to the UK and Europe has done a lot more for mental health, for healthy workplaces. I think the US is quite behind in that. And so I think we have a lot to go because we're almost in a bubble on this side of the world versus like neighbors with a bunch of countries who are like challenging that status quo and building, and like my community on LinkedIn are mostly in that time zone. So you're seeing what they're doing and the strides that they're making there. In the US is kind of its own mentality that like they're first and foremost in the world and everybody follows us, where it's like it's almost funny to see as an American that that's not the case now living back in this country whenever I viewed it from another perspective. And so like the
Hmm.
US is finally getting like where you like tap your card and it like pays, or like Apple Pay.
Hmm.
Like we're almost 10 years behind on like funny things like that versus where Europe, that's the normal, like nobody carries cards anymore. So I think the US has that mentality that they are the almighty, all powerful kind of country. And to a degree that's true, but they're so far behind in other ways that they have no idea about. And so I just
Hmm.
think that's really
Yeah, well, and I think the U.S. it's really profit driven, right? Or it's really, hey, let's work harder so we can make more, so we can buy more, so the stock market keeps going up. I don't know. I feel like that's a big part of it.
yeah.
Is just
It's a
drive,
greedy
drive, drive.
country. Yeah, we'll say it like it is. It's pretty greedy. It's that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Let's build, build, build. And it's not all bad, but it comes with the territory of a lot of corruption and a lot of like really toxic habits and mentalities. And like we're valuing our bottom line versus you as a person and that kind of stuff. And I think that's just not a way to build and build healthily and build stable. And you'll see a lot of like lawsuits and, layoffs and those kind of things in the US, like maybe a bit more. And that's just normal. And
Yeah.
that's not the way it should be.
Yeah, it's just peak capitalism. Or if you go into the grocery store, and it always blows my mind now, you know, all the flavors of Oreos or Reese's, and it's just like we need to think of all these different combinations just so people buy them. And yeah, it's just interesting. We're unique for sure.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. I will give you kind of the floor to close this out here. I think we covered a lot of topics, but again, where people can find you, any final thoughts about where you're headed or anything you want to leave the audience with. But again, hey, I appreciate you taking the time. It's super interesting picking your brain.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for inviting me on. This has been really fun. You can find me at the Sarah Yeary, Yeary, on most all social platforms. And yeah, follow what I'm doing. I would love to connect with you and help be a part of your community too. So
thanks, Sarah. Yeah, and I'll put your info down in the description as well. So thanks again. I wish you the best of luck, and hey, let's stay in touch.
awesome. Let's do it. Sounds good.